School personnel who are trained to handle asbestos have limitations. They can only disturb 3 square or linear feet of asbestos-containing materials for emergency repairs only, never for removal. AHERA requires that any project involving greater than 3 square or linear feet of disturbance of asbestos-containing material requires a project design. Once the project design has been written, it's the school district's responsibility to hire an accredited abatement contractor. Prior to demolition, a full asbestos inspection should be conducted by an accredited building inspector. That building inspector is looking for all suspect materials. Let's go on a tour of this school and see if we can find some asbestos-containing materials. This boiler is going to be demolished and taken out of this structure. The blanket insulation that previously covered it has already been removed. When the workers were removing this and getting ready for final visual inspection and then clearance air testing, they noticed that there was insulation on the ground in this area. In fact, there's a piece of it right there. This is what we call vermiculite insulation. Now again, vermiculite is one of those materials that may contain asbestos. It was tainted with asbestos. This supply, the supply rather that is asbestos containing came from Libby, Montana historically, and they refer to it as Libby, Montana amphibole asbestos. In fact, if you were to look inside here, you can see that it was poured as another barrier, ultimately, another fire barrier inside of this casing. We tested this material. It came back negative for asbestos, so the abatement workers will not have to remove this after the boiler is lifted off of its base. These yellow and black AHERA stickers are to be placed on all friable materials in routine maintenance areas. This is done in an effort to prevent the inadvertent disturbance of these materials during routine maintenance activities. All school personnel should contact the designated person before engaging in any activities that may disturb asbestos. It's very important never to be fooled by the idea that all the asbestos has been removed from a boiler room. Here we see replacement materials made of fiberglass. Sometimes these can actually cover over asbestos-containing materials. An inspector must ensure that all layers of pipe insulation are inspected before anyone engages in the removal. Here's an example of a typical boiler room where we have thermal system insulation containing asbestos. This is what we call air cell insulation. And right down here we have fiberglass pipe wrap. Again, in close proximity to one another, one's asbestos, the other is not. Here we have pins and needles, ceiling tile, 2x4 lay-in panels. Not the most common material to find anymore, but anytime you see this pattern, again, it's a pretty good indicator that what you're looking at there is asbestos ceiling tile. Every 3 years, school districts have to have their materials that have been identified as asbestos reassessed as far as their condition goes. Water damage is a category of damage for asbestos-containing materials. Gouges, marks otherwise in the material that we see up here, furthermore, could be indicators of damage. Here we have a typical high school chemistry classroom, and we have countertops here. One is non-asbestos, whereas the other one right next to it is. This is why we have to have asbestos inspectors in here to take these samples prior to any form of demolition. Another example of materials that may or may not contain asbestos include these sinks. This sink is transite, whereas the sink on the other side is metal. School districts need to remember that asbestos projects take time. Time to identify the material, time to notify the proper agencies. Anytime a school district has a planned renovation or demolition activity, an asbestos test always comes first. The DNR does not generally accept any asbestos survey older than 1 year. The survey is required in conjunction with a specific renovation or demolition project. In addition, the DNR also needs a notification of renovations. If the inspection identifies asbestos content, then the school must notify for renovations. When asbestos is identified within a renovation space, the owner or operator must submit a notification of renovation to the DNR even if they're not going to disturb that material. Demolition of or in a commercial building always requires a 10 working day notification to the Iowa DNR. School buildings are considered under the NESHAP's regulation to be a commercial building. Renovation 10 working day notifications are required if asbestos is present in or around the renovation building or area. When in doubt, call the DNR. Owners and operators are legally responsible for all asbestos NESHAPS regulations, including all 10-day notifications. The Iowa Division of Labor requires a 10 working day notification for contractors in advance of any asbestos abatement or removal project. Today we're at a different asbestos abatement work site where the workers are going to be removing floor tile and mastic that contains asbestos. The workers are putting up poly sheeting in an effort to stop migrating fibers from leaving the regulated area. The HEPA filters in the negative air machines combined with the poly sheeting help keep the fibers on the inside. Thus preventing exposures to anyone outside the space. Poly curtain doors are used to allow air in through the negative air machines while yet stopping that air from returning back out that direction. Once the signs have been posted, all school personnel should stay away from the regulated area. Always heed any signs posted on the job site. The school district is responsible for issuing a notification to all school personnel prior to engaging in an asbestos abatement project. These workers are setting up for a Class 2 activity. Generally speaking, Class 2 activities are the removal of non-friable asbestos when taken out largely intact. Anytime we have a Class 1 removal, the removal ultimately of friable asbestos, that requires everything. The 3-cell decon unit with the running shower, maintaining the negative air pressure, having poly all over every surface. So yeah, it's all gone now, but at one time looked just like the other space that we saw earlier. These workers are removing mastic. The mastic contained the asbestos in this case, as the floor tile were negative. Workers scoop up mastic and place it into the barrel for disposal. The barrel is then sealed, labeled, and then taken to the airlock where it's taken to the asbestos dumpster. These workers will take these barrels to the asbestos dumpster. Then the asbestos dumpster will be taken to the appropriate landfill that accepts asbestos waste and disposed of. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, please contact the Iowa Department of Natural Resources Air Quality Bureau.